Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Wu-Man Chu Chronicles. I am Wu-Man Chu, and every single Monday I bring on a guest that's either performed on Fest, at my music and comedy festival in Colorado, or that's I'm planning on bringing in the near future. So, um, my guest tonight is Freddie Penn, and I met him at an open mic in Port Orange, and he's pretty awesome, and so we'll bring him on as a guest here in a little bit. But we're raising funds for Smitty's Greenlight Tavern and the Grindhouse Cafe, where we recently had Fest last weekend. So without further ado, all the information is scrolling on the bottom there, and it's also beneath the YouTube video. So definitely subscribe, like, and all that good stuff with all those kind folks. So ladies and gentlemen, Freddie Penn. Hey Freddie, how are ya?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So you must be wondering, how's the superhero interviewing you? Well,
Wondering that, yeah.
indeed. Well, there's like Superman and Spider-Man, and there's Wu-Man Chu, and we're all superheroes and journalists. So let's have fun with this journalism thing, because, being a superhero can be rough sometimes.
Well, journalism I think, is a superpower, number one. And you're in good company with Superman, as I understand it. I'm not an expert, but is also a journalist on the side. I'm right about that, right?
Yep.
And what universe do you exist in?
Oh, I will live in the slums of Shaolin.
Okay, so you're not a part of DC or Marvel.
I wish I was. It'd be fantastic. But I'm a free agent.
I know that you're interviewing me, but which one would you rather be a part of?
Oh, as for me, I would probably go with Marvel, because I love the X-Men cartoons growing up, and
yeah, I do the X-Men.
Yep, and then they're just like such a cool collective, and I would totally love to be part of the X-Men if I could.
Marvel seems to have like their movies probably do better than DC. I guess I don't know that for sure, but it seems like, as someone that's not as super into it but likes some of the movies, it seems like the Marvel movies definitely get like a lot more buzz and probably bring in more revenue than DC.
Indeed. Plus, their cartoons do better. DC does. Their cartoons do better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, they both have some great iconic heroes. So either one, I think you couldn't go wrong if you had the choice. Yep. I'm sure one day you'll be presented the option.
I hope so. That'd be fantastic. I have so many stories as myself with my concert journalism days out in Los Angeles and all that good stuff. Indeed. Well, we're talking about you this evening, so... Freddie, we met, my alter ego met. He's not here at the moment. But we met at in Port Orange Thank You 5 when you performed Front Yards and Sanctuaries, I believe. And that was a fantastic song. What was the story behind Front Yards and Sanctuaries?
The story behind the song is that I've been writing for a long time. I think since I was about 13. I started playing guitar at like 10, picked up the songwriting kind of deal, like singer-songwriter stuff at around 13. And I've always gravitated towards like sadder songs. And so I was always kind of known as like a breakup song kind of guy. It just seemed like that the people would like those more, and I was like out of the little circle that I was in performing and writing. That was kind of my thing. So this was another breakup song, but I like to think it's kind of innovative in that I thought about writing from somebody else's perspective. I had been through a breakup, and I was thinking about how typically when two people break up, they're like in a romantic thing, and then they split apart. You seem to like go into your separate tribes, like your inner circle of friends. And typically, if it's like a guy and a girl, like the guy is hanging out with the dudes, girls hanging out with the girls. Not always, but I was thinking about this other person that I broke up with and how she was probably like talking with all of her friends. And typically, like if you're in that situation, your friends are kind of building you up a little bit and being like, they weren't good for you. You know, you could do so much better. And I was thinking about at that moment, like what they were probably saying about me. And I wrote a song from that perspective of like the things that I was imagining they were saying about me. That's a long explanation, but that's essentially what the song is about.
Indeed. It kind of reminds me of like when you talked about it, it reminded me of like Grease right away with Olivia Newton-John and John. The movie Grease with like Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminded me of that when you were explaining it.
Cool. I don't think I've gotten that connection before.
Oh yeah.
Watch Grease. It's been a long time. I think I saw it last when I was a kid. So yeah. I think when we did that open mic, it was like, how long do they give you? It was an awkward amount of time for a songwriter or singer, because I think it was like 5 minutes, and they were pretty strict about it. And I was like, I don't have any like 2.5 minute songs really. Like everything is bound to go over that a little bit. So I just decided to do the one. But everyone there, yourself included, was just so talented and like brought something unique to the table. I'm sad I haven't been back. I was always planning on going back, but then coronavirus happened, and here we are.
Indeed. Well, sad news to announce is that Thank You Five is no longer around. They caved into the Rona.
Darn.
Yeah.
That's really too bad. You know, I lived in Port Orange, just down the street from where that was for years, and I remember when it opened, and I always drove by there and thought, like, what is that? I'm gonna Google that when I get home, and I would always forget. And then it wasn't until I moved to DeLand and I was looking for open mics, and I found that one. I'm glad I got to go that one time. It's so hard though, and I'm sure you have the same experience as like a local performer. It seems sometimes like the best venues are the ones that come and go like that. You know, it's so hard for small businesses to stay open that are kind of like fostering the arts. Yeah, that's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that.
Indeed. That's why I'm like every Sunday night and every Monday night I raise funds for all my favorite venues.
That's so cool.
That's awesome. So that's why like I do my very best to do like, because without them my fest won't happen, and there's no concerts happening and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure they really appreciate that, and that's awesome that you're giving back to people that, you know, provide a platform for local, whether it's comedians or musicians or poets or whoever, to come up. And, you know, that's how I came into all of this and became a writer, is because I realized that there were these spaces to go and perform. And I think a lot of times that kind of provides the drive to write. At least for me, I guess, speaking personally, I don't know what other people's experience are, but I remember growing up having the weekly open mic that I would go to. I would be writing songs, thinking of performing them, and thinking like, I've got to finish this. Like if I finish this, I can play it on Wednesday and then see if people like it. And it was just such a motivating factor. Just as I'm talking about it now, I'm maybe realizing that that's maybe part of my slowing down as I've gotten older and like moved to Florida, since I haven't had like a solid open mic really to go to on a regular basis. This probably contributed to like not writing as many songs as I would like to. Also, working a full-time job probably does that too. But yeah, God bless you for helping those places stay afloat.
Thank you very much. It means a lot because they mean a lot to me. So I gotta, and plus my pals own the venue, some of them, and so they never, they're always like, yeah, let's put on the fest here. I'm like, all right, fantastic. So they're fantastic folks. So I have to give back, like you said. But so the next time I saw you perform was on Main Street, at Froggy's, and that was quite a cool experience because I never got to see you perform like a full 1 hour set. It was just all original music. So if I can, I'm gonna pull up some of the songs that you performed that day. And let's talk about the stories behind the music, shall we?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So you performed "Fading in the Haze." What was the story behind "Fading in the Haze"?
I actually wrote that about a friend's breakup. Um, I was this guy who was actually a I shouldn't out him in his breakup story. I don't think he would mind. His name is Kevin Goodwin, and if you're listening, you should look him up if you like music. He's on Spotify and all of the. You could look him up on YouTube, and he's a kick-ass songwriter. And we actually lived together for a brief period in Greensboro when we were in college, Greensboro, North Carolina. And I was actually, me and my girlfriend at the time were with him when he went to break up with somebody. And it was a weird experience. So I wrote a song kind of from his perspective, I guess, about the breakup.
It's pretty neat that you get to write about some different vantage points.
Yeah, for someone that focuses so much on that, there's only so much personal experience you can draw from, hopefully. So I've found ways to cheat a little bit and write kind of about other people's emotional turmoil. It's a good or bad thing, but as a songwriter, I guess it's a kind of a neat little exercise. And consequently, he's told me that's his favorite of the songs that I've written. So I was glad that something good came out of it. And yeah, I'm super proud of him. Go look up Kevin Goodwin. He's phenomenal.
Absolutely, I'll definitely look up Kevin Goodwin for sure. And then let's see here. You performed "Through the Wires" as well. And what's the story behind "Through the Wires"?
That is a song about doing punk rock as a kid, like being in a punk rock band as a high school kid, just playing in garage bands and feeling like you could take over the world.
Sweet. I definitely dig punk rock for sure.
Yeah, that's what I grew up on. Still a big part of me, even though I've mostly done kind of the acoustic sad boy kind of thing. I have punk rock roots, I like to think. Anyway.
Indeed. My buddy used to tell me that Fest reminds them of punk rock. That has a punk rock spirit because we just pop up in different venues and we make it free and everyone just goes there and enjoys free music and comedy.
It seems like it. I haven't been to it, but it seems like it's by the performers for the performers. It's not super clean or super well funded thing. It's just people wanting to do something and they make it happen. It's do it yourself and raw and definitely punk rock vibes all the way.
Absolutely. So I can't wait to see you perform on there sometime. Hopefully in the near future. That'd be fantastic. I agree too. Looking forward to seeing you on one of those stages for sure. So you also performed The Other Side. What's the story behind The Other Side?
I think it's along the same lines as Through the Wires. I think it's just about kind of rebelling, a little bit of teenage rebellion. From what I remember, I wrote that when I was 18. I think I had just gone to college or was getting, I think maybe the summer before college. And yeah, just kind of the teen angst probably a little bit coming out.
Indeed. Fantastic stuff. And going back to your early beginnings as a punk rock fan, you had Punk Rock Friend. What's the story behind Punk Rock Friend?
Well, this is a song about one of the guys that I did the punk band. He was in the punk band that I started. The band was called Langley. The guy, his name is Blaine, and I feel bad because I don't remember the name of his new band. He's in the intervening years. I think when I first met him, he was in a band called Incense, and they were super grunge kind of punk rock. And he's got like long blonde hair. He looks like Kurt Cobain. Just really, really cool dude. One of my best friends. And yeah, the songs about him just being like true to himself and having like, I don't know, of all the people that I've known, he's like, his core he's remained who he is through kind of growing up. As I've watched like other people change, myself included, change, in ways not like in a superficial way, but he's always had this like edge about him, but this like very genuine, like really, really cool person. So yeah, that was a song. I actually wrote it when I was I went on to do like a folk punk duo with someone in college called Foxy Future. And that was one of the songs that we did on I don't even know if they got released. I don't even know what released. We probably put on like Reverb Nation or something. But we had an EP called Narcoleptic Nemesis. I doubt anyone could find it on the internet, but if you can, then gold star, totally. But yeah, that's where it came from.
Awesome. That's good stuff. Incense sounds intense.
It was intense. Yeah. They're really good musicians too. I mean, he like, has grown to be like, when we first started out, he was of the more talented people that were doing the punk rock, like starting bands in garages and, playing at some of these little dinky venues we were doing. And then to watch him like progress as, now we're 20 somethings and he is stuck with music a lot more than other people, like myself included. And just really grown into this incredible songwriter, vocalist, performer. And he's been through like, he's had several bands, like successful bands. He's still up in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. I think Donner Deads. I think that might be, I can't remember if that's the most recent one. I think it is Donner Deads. But I saw him, I had the chance to see him when I was up for Christmas, I think. And we caught up. It had been a while, but yeah, I like this. This is nostalgic.
Awesome. Fantastic. We have some viewers in the audience. So if you'd like, jump in the chat and we'll interact with you, but be nice to us.
Yeah. Please don't be mean. I'll cry.
So you also performed on Sophomore Sinner. What is the story behind Sophomore Sinner?
If I remember correctly, it was, I think it was like I guess along the same lines of like rebelling, like teenage rebellion kind of songs. I think like in some ways it's like a like advice song, like to the younger generation, like don't let the man get you down, that kind of thing. It's not one that I've ever, it's not one that I break out too much. It's interesting. I forgot that I played it. But yeah, it's one of the ones it's always been around, but I've never spent much time like trying to record it or anything. Yeah.
Indeed. And between the years of being a sophomore sinner and being a teenager, like you're about a junior, you're like around 17-ish. So you also performed 17. So what's the story behind 17?
I have a lot of like songs about nostalgia, about my youth. Which is, I mean, most of these songs I wrote when I was a lot younger. 17, I wrote when I was 18. It was in college. It was like my first or second week at school. And I had a very tumultuous on and off relationship with someone in high school, first love kind of deal, and a broken heart. And it was one of those kind of things. And it was a song about kind of moving on and forgiving and kind of coming to terms with that and moving on like in a positive way.
Awesome. Fantastic.
And
And,
that 17 is like maybe I think as writers one of the songs that one of the first songs I feel like stands up, and like one that I could be like proud of performing today even. Whereas like some of the songs I wrote before then and even after then like would never see the light of day. You know, it's like I don't know if you've had that in your creative experience, and I don't know what the equivalent of in comedy, but I feel like you have like those milestones, and it seemed to be like a milestone where it's like I can look back um, and think that song was cool even at 27 or however old I am, 27.
indeed. Yeah, yeah, I feel that way about stand up too. It's like just throw a bunch of jokes at the wall and see which ones stick. And if people get laughs out of it, build on it. If it doesn't, just throw it in the trash.
Yeah, it's sink or swim.
Yep, most
You got to
definitely.
keep going.
Absolutely. And you performed Folded as well. What's the story behind Folded?
Um, that was a love song I wrote to a girl at the time I was dating. I was on tour. Um, I went on a tour called the Green Sundresses Tour. We had to name our tours back then. We played like coffee shops, and yeah, I think all coffee shops. I don't think hardly any of them paid us. We stayed with like friends and relatives, and we were gone for like maybe 2 weeks. And I think I wrote it when I came back, but it was about like missing my girlfriend um, when I was gone, and yeah, and it's stuck around. I later married that girl, and I think the song probably helped convince her. But then we got divorced, and but it was a very amicable. But the song is, and the song can stick around because it was, you know, it was very true in its time, and I, other people can can relate to it. I think. I hope.
Most definitely, indeed. And speaking of marriages, I saw this video on YouTube about mathematically sound, and you wrote it for your brother's wedding, I believe.
I
Uh,
did.
but let's go more into detail on mathematically sound.
I think I had written at the time, like not too long before then, had written like a love song to someone about someone, and my brother was getting married to this girl that is still his wife. I think it was like 2013, and he had asked me to play that love song at his wedding, and I was like, I'll do it for their first dance, and I was like, I'll do it, but I'll sing at your wedding, but I want to try to write you guys a song. Like no guarantees because it might not work out, but it was kind of like a challenge to myself. Like, can I write a good song about somebody else's relationship that's a brother like that I know? Like it was kind of weird. And they're both engineers, so that's where like the mathematic part comes in. They have share a common kind of way of looking at the world and handling things, very like logical people. So yeah, I still like that song a lot, and I think that they danced to it, their first dance at their wedding, and they've stayed together. So I like to tell people that I do play weddings, and I have a 100% success rate for the weddings that I've performed at. 100% of the time, those two people have gotten married. So I think I've done 3 now, and yeah, 100%. So book me for your wedding.
You heard Freddie. Book him for your wedding. That's fantastic. Most definitely. And then you also performed "Don't Fall Asleep." What's the story behind
That was
"Don't
the
Fall"?
song. That was the love song I was talking about that he originally asked me to play. I'm pretty sure that was I wrote for a girl in the past. Yeah, just a kind of love song kind of thing.
Oh, indeed, most definitely. And there's wedding bells, folks.
It's my brother texting me, actually. It's his birthday today, so happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday to your brother with the Mathematically Sound song.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then following along the themes of Don't Fall Asleep was Bedroom Town, which I happen to like. What's the story behind Bedroom Town? Well, I like all your music, but what's the story behind... Welcome. What's the story behind Bedroom Town?
I believe that one of my favorite songwriters I know one of my favorite songwriters had this idea. He was like, what if I asked people that were songwriters to write me a song to sing, and I would do like an album of songs other people have written for me to play on this album, which I thought was brilliant. I might steal that idea, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. And I'm also like having a bit of a writer's block myself. And I don't think he ever did it, but I wrote the song kind of about, and I drew from my own experiences too, but we both had relationships that didn't work out. And we were both in different ways, in different kind of lanes. He's a professional musician, but I've had the experience too, where like you're choosing kind of a life that makes it harder to, that it's not a 9-to-5, that makes relationships harder, and kind of the feelings of you have these kind of feelings sometimes about how it would be easier just to take up a regular job and like live a kind of regular normal person life and a normal person marriage. And that's kind of what the song is about, like choosing like your passion and your career sometimes over sometimes what feels like the way it should be.
Indeed. And I believe that you sent me a track off SoundCloud before it was like even mixed or mastered for the song. It was one of the songs that you sent, but it might have been
I did record that recently. I don't know if that's yeah.
Indeed. Good stuff. And then you also performed Segment. What's the story behind Segment?
I think it's like a coming of age thing. Like first start like dating and getting to know the people that you're attracted to. In my case, it was girls, but to each their own. So I would hope everyone could relate to it. But yeah, like kind of coming of age experience in that regard. You could read between the lines.
Most definitely.
Yeah,
and the one that's currently out on all kinds of platforms is Pines. What's the story behind Pines?
Well, it sounds kind of like a relationship song, like a breakup song, I think, but it's actually about a murder, which I don't think a lot of people would get just listening to it. But I spent the last over 2 years of my life on a investigative podcast series about an unsolved murder in my hometown. And the long and the short of it is I've spent most of that time is trying to find certain people, like getting these leads and like finding like names of people and having to track them down, which a lot of times is harder than it sounds. And just constantly wondering about like where they've ended up, and thinking, and kind of a theme in the song too is that there's people that it seems like to me and other people that they'd rather just let this situation go and forget about it, or at least for other people to forget about it. And you have people like me that don't that are longing to get to the truth. So that's definitely like a theme in the song is like knowing that there are people out there that would rather just forget about it, but it just keeps coming back up again.
Goodness, which is a nice segment of or transition into your podcast that you have out now called Unforgotten. And what's the story behind Unforgotten? Because there's so many episodes of it.
It's a podcast all about one case. I guess there's a lot of true crime podcasts that do like a new case each time. And this was probably like a lot of creative projects for people, not something that I intended to do when I started out. I started listening to true crime podcasts. I think my older brother got me into it, like maybe 2016 or 2017. But I wasn't like obsessed with them or anything. Was never like a true crime guy. But as I was listening to one of the more popular ones, dealt with the unsolved murder, and this guy that, pretty seemed to be like not from like a major network or anything, didn't have a lot of resources, but he kind of picked apart this 10-year-old cold case and ended up not directly, but through kind of getting the case out there again and stirring things up in this small town, there was an arrest for the first time in like 10 years. And the truth came out about this missing persons case. The podcast is called Up and Vanished. And as I was listening to it, I was thinking, like, there's this cold case from where I grew up. I went to a small religious school, and one of the classmates that I had, her dad was murdered in the middle of the night, 2009, sleeping next to his wife and newborn child in a what should be kind of a safe suburban environment. And someone allegedly came in, started shooting, and he died, and the person got away. And it seemed like nobody had really talked about it in many years. So I kind of got the idea, like, somebody should do a podcast on this. Like, I think people would think it's really interesting. And I knew like a little bit more about it because I went to the school. Some of the people, some of my teachers were like best friends with the victim. So it was a really, really sad time for us. And even though I didn't know them, like, I was kind of watching other people experience this really profound, tragic thing. So it stuck with me, and I knew that it was a big deal. And I had always kind of in the back of my mind wondered, like, whatever happened in this case. And so I thought, well, somebody's got to do something about this. And as I kind of looked into it, I reached out to some friends that I thought might have connections in the podcast world or the documentary world. And I found, as I was kind of trying to pitch it to them, that this would be something that they ought to work on. I realized how it compared to other cases in terms of information that's out there, was that it's like it was almost like nothing there. There was like a few articles about it, and then it just disappeared. And it seemed like a case that wouldn't happen, given that all the elements of it, the person being well loved in the community, was a nurse, he was a father of 3, he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was living this this really good life, and it was a vicious murder out of the blue. So as I started talking to some of the people that had reported on it last, I kind of tracked down some of those journalists. They were more the ones that convinced me that, like, you could, since you have these connections, you might be able to get a story out of this. And that's kind of how it all started. And as I got going, I realized that it's kind of apparent in the earlier episodes that there was much more to the story than was ever reported in the press. And I didn't know that it would take over 2 years of my life and take up all my free time and really like constantly occupy my thoughts as it has. But that's what happened. And kind of became very passionate, you could say obsessed with the case and finding justice for this guy. And there's, if you like true crime, you may like the podcast.
Indeed, and it can be found on Freddie's website, which is scrolling on the bottom there, along with his IG and social.
You can go to unforgottenpodcast.com too to get the podcast website. And if you just want to learn more about the case, whokilledmattstewart.com.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thanks for letting the audience know where to find all that interesting podcast stuff. And that was pretty intense, dude.
Yeah, sorry, it's such a long answer, but yeah, it's a complicated story, I guess. I didn't like wake up one day and think like I really want to start a podcast. It was, one thing led to another, and then all of a sudden I'm a podcaster. And yeah, so now I'm in kind of, the series has ended. Kind of reached like the point where I don't really know where to go next on the case. I feel like I've exhausted every lead. So now I'm just trying to get other people to pick up, to do episodes on it, and hopefully to get a national news organization or outlet or whoever to shed some light on it and sink their teeth into it and have the police, actually do something.
Most definitely. And I watched like some YouTube interview that you did about it, and you shared it recently. And some of the cable networks reached out to you. Like, which ones were they again, and how did that all come about?
Investigation Discovery was the big one that reached out. A producer from a show called Still a Mystery, which I guess covers. I actually have not seen any of it, so I can't. But it sounds very interesting. I don't have Investigation Discovery. I think it's like a separate thing you have to buy, or I think maybe some of the shows are on Netflix. But it's a big. If you don't know, it's like a big true crime network. So they did reach out, but the thing about the case that I think has made it so difficult for journalists to cover it is that the family of the victim has made it pretty clear that they don't want press coverage. They will do things themselves where they'll go on YouTube and talk about it, or talk about it publicly in some form or another, but they really don't want anyone to talk about the facts of the case or look into it or ask who could have done it. And that presents a challenge for networks, especially too, because that's paired with law enforcement also doesn't want anyone to talk about it. It doesn't seem they've been tight-lipped about it and don't seem to have any interest in providing information or trying to get the story out there. So networks like Investigation Discovery are kind of left thinking, well, we could do another case where, the family does want justice and they'll work with us and it'll be a lot easier. So it's a challenge.
Most definitely. Unsolved Mysteries should pick it up too. Unsolved Mysteries.
I would love, yeah. For your audience out there, the crowdsourcing is a real thing. Write to Nancy Grace or Unsolved Mysteries. Netflix should do something. I've said, like, when they reached out to me, I think a lot of people like want to know like how cooperative I'll be, or like if I don't want anything. I'm not like, you can have all my interviews, you can have all my research. I don't care. I'm just trying to get like a wider audience to look at this, and especially people that know what they're doing, because I definitely don't. And I think that looking at a lot of these cases that have been solved, usually they come with intense media pressure on police to speed up the investigation and do something. And that's something that this case has always lacked. So I feel like I believe that it would make a difference. It would make a big difference.
Indeed. It's kind of like a real life game of Clue too, which is
Colonel Mustard and stuff. It's definitely interesting. And I think, if you listen to it and you're into that kind of thing, it's definitely will keep your interest. But it's on the flip side, it's like, it's real people, and it's a real guy that like deserves justice and didn't deserve to have his life end like that. And that's what has kept me motivated, thinking about, if it was me, I would want, people that I love and whoever to be constantly pushing to find out who did this and stop the person so they don't do it to someone else and do it to someone else's family,
Most definitely. We'll flip it back to the bright side of things. And
this got dark. Sorry, I have the tendency to do that.
Indeed, my superhero name, like Clark Kent and Peter Parker, is Darker. So it's like we go dark sometimes. But you've been going under the name Freddie Penn as a singer songwriter. Why did you pick the name Freddie Penn?
I like to say it's my pen name, but in all seriousness, I was driving. Well, I wasn't driving. I was in a car going on the way to the first open mic I ever did. I was 13, and I had an older cousin that was from another state, but he was down for the summer, staying with my grandparents at a lake house, and we were pretty much living over there. So we were all hanging out, and he convinced me to start to try doing an open mic because I'd been kind of writing songs. And it was my older brother and my cousin and I were driving on the way to the open mic, and somebody brought up, they were like, what are you going to call yourself? Because you can't go by, at the time I was going by Andy, it's my first name. You can't go by Andy Wilson. It's like, that's not cool. And I agreed. I was like, yeah, it's got to be, I need like a rapper name or something. And we joked about that for a while. And my older brother, who's not musically inclined at all, for some reason, he was like, if I ever started a band, I'd call it Fountain Pen, but don't take it or anything because I might use it later. And I was like, oh, I won't. And then when I got up on stage and they asked, you know, what do you want me to, what should we introduce you as? I said Fountain Pen. And that stuck. And then my older brother, like, we had this big joke about he was going to sue me because I took his name. And I said, well, I'll add another pen, or I'll add another N to the pen so that will make it my own. And so that's where the two N's come from. So I was Fountain Pen for, I don't know, like over a decade. I went by Fountain Pen. And then when I was a little bit older, I was always like envious of artists like Bob Dylan and Elliott Smith, who had names that like could actually have been their real names, but they actually weren't. So I liked pseudonyms like that, where you kind of fly under the radar of having like a special little name for your project. So I consolidated. I didn't change my name. I told people I consolidated to Freddie, which I go by now, my middle name, Freddie Penn.
Awesome, fantastic stuff. And as a Fountain Pen, you went on tour with Donnie Welch for the Mountain to Sea tour. Yep. How do you know Donnie, and what are some stories behind the Juggling Gypsy Cafe, Local Lou's Coffee House, Firestorm Cafe, and Bird's Nest?
Oh, man. I'm glad that you went on YouTube. Those were fun times. So we actually did 2 tours. We did the Mountain to Sea in 2012, that summer, I think like the end of the summer. And then the next summer we did the Green Sundresses tour. That was a lot bigger. But yeah, so we met years before. He was kind of a mutual friend. This guy I met just playing music out, I think. Or maybe he was also a mutual friend. But his name's Tyler Bryant, and it's not the Tyler. There's another famous musician called Tyler Bryant, and it's not that. So this guy's gone by various. I don't know what his moniker is these days, but Tyler Bryant was in a band called Greylock, which was like a kind of bluegrassy, folky kind of band, and Donnie Welch played the what do you call it? The washboard. But he was also a performance poet, and a really freaking good one at that. So we played the same venues back in those days when I was like 16, 17, and really kind of got to know each other through playing shows together. And I'm trying to think of, I think him and Tyler had gone on a tour maybe it's summer of 11. And I had always wanted to go on tour. I think probably watching, what really got me into like wanting to tour was watching a documentary of the band called Social Distortion, a famous punk documentary called Another State of Mind. I think it was like 82. And it's a it's the, in the summer they go on this like nationwide tour in this beat up old school bus. And I probably watched that at 15, 14, and I wanted my life to be like that. So I remember when they went on that tour, I was like, I want a tour and I should do it with this guy, Donnie, because he's been on a tour. So he knows what to do. And so we planned the first tour, and we went to those, I think we did like 3, it was mountain to sea, meant like we were going from the mountain to sea in North Carolina. So we went out to Wilmington on the beach, and then we went, I think we played in Raleigh. And then we went and played in Asheville, which is like a cool artsy mountain town. And then we went home and did like a show at one of the venues in my hometown, Davidson, called the Bird's Nest, which is like a music store that also does. So that was really fun. And we were like, we had to do it up the next year. So we did the Green Sundresses tour. And then on that tour, we decided that we were going to raise money to fund the tour by him and I doing a collab where I would play guitar and sing, and then like for verses or for choruses, and then but the verses of the songs would be his poetry. So it was like it was a duo, and then we kind of ended up that launched into like our own little side project. Did we raise any money off of that EP? I don't remember doing. I remember it maybe being mostly parents and friends that just gave us money to go and very generous family and friends along the way. So we kind of like mapped out like, where do we know people? And that's where we booked shows at these like little coffee shop venues. And we went up, we did the southern Northeast and the eastern Midwest. So we went up to like Philly, played like DC and Richmond and Raleigh, I think, on the way. And then we went out, did Pittsburgh and Fort Wayne, Indiana. Where else did we play? Oh, we ended up going to West Lafayette, Indiana. I wanted to go there because that's where my grandparents met. So that was fun. And then we went out to Indianapolis, and there's a documentary on that too. I think it's the better of the documentaries. It was the better one of the tours. And spoiler, at the end of the tour, the last show we were going to play, there was a sign on the door that said that the venue had been shut down due to tax evasion. And they didn't tell us. So we were in Indianapolis, and then our show, we were supposed to do an Asheville show, and that fell through too. So it all ended unceremoniously in Indianapolis, and we drove home. But it was probably one of the best summers of my life with Donnie and then my friend Kevin. Kevin Earl is also a songwriter, very good, still doing it. Yeah, very, very good times.
Indeed. It bites when you set up this really nice tour and the little tail end just goes away. And like my alter ego had a stand-up comedy tour last October, and all of a sudden, like the first 3 shows went well, and then this big old snowstorm came in and shut down all the roads to like Denver and Colorado Springs and Fort Collins. And that was the end of my tour. I could have performed at a very nice comedy club, but that never happened. But it's nice. But
that's life. Yeah,
it is life. Yeah.
What we did, like right after that happened, and I think you can maybe even see in the documentary, which should still be on YouTube. It's like we saw the sign on the door that said that they were shut down. And then we also saw all of these like touring acts that were coming through, like the posters were still up. And we realized if they didn't tell us, they probably didn't tell these other people too. And they were all coming in. So we like spent the next couple hours trying to contact all of the people, letting them know not to come to Indianapolis because there was no gig. It was fun. I mean, we kind of took it in stride. We were not relying on the money from the shows to get us to the next place because, we had, parents and friends that had donated to our cause. So, we took it in stride and kind of thought it was actually, given everything else we had been through and like kind of the kind of DIY fall apart kind of way that everything else had happened, it was actually quite fitting to have, and it made for like a really funny end to the documentary. Rockumentary is really what it was. But yeah,
awesome stuff. And I remember seeing Social Distortion at the Fillmore in Denver.
I remember you told me that. Yeah,
it was a pretty cool show for sure.
How they do?
They did pretty well. They still sounded like they were, back in the day.
So. Yeah. Well, they got to be like probably in their 50s.
I think so too.
Mike Ness is one of my favorite songwriters.
Most definitely. He has a distinct sound about him.
Yeah. Yeah, they really like came into their own after when they did like their first album. They kind of sounded like a lot of other punk bands. Mm-hmm. And then he went to jail, and then he came out and they did Prison Bound, and they kind of, remade their image and their sound into like what people call cowpunk, like the country punk, or like rockabilly punk, which pretty much their sound, like what people know them for.
Most definitely, good stuff. And so, you mentioned that you performed under Penn for over a decade, and you have over 200 original songs, which is pretty wild. And you played coffee shops all over the country, including just everywhere where your grandparents met, and in North Carolina and all that good stuff. Let's see here. You also have an interesting obsession with UFOs. What's the story behind that?
I'm glad that you picked up on that. I don't know. I bet in one of our meetings, one of the times we've hung out, I've probably ranted about UFOs, right? Uh-huh. Or just picking it up because of do I have it on my like logo or something?
Yep, I've seen it on your Instagram and on during one of our meetings.
Yeah. I don't hide it very well. Yeah, I think I was like 16. I mean, like as a kid, I think I always liked. I was always fascinated by like UFO movies or like movies about aliens, but it wasn't like a real thing. It wasn't like a, I don't know, like a particular interest until I was like 16, and I was going down one of those YouTube rabbit holes where the next video plays, and I got onto this like UFO kick. I don't know why, but it was a documentary with scientists. People were analyzing footage from some of the early Apollo missions, and there were like crafts, or there was like something in the film that would be going at a certain speed and then like rapidly changing direction. And there were people with credentials, like scientists, that were analyzing the video and explaining how fast that object was going and how physically impossible it was for it to maneuver in the way that it was maneuvering. And that was the first time I think that I knew that people believed in UFOs. And I don't know if I was old enough really to have or cared enough to have like an informed opinion on it, but it was the first time I realized that like, oh, there are some real educated, serious people that take this subject matter seriously. And so I started looking into it more, and I kind of got hooked on it. Like so actually, it's funny that you brought that up. In the documentary that we did on the tour, I realized, I think we were in Philly and we were going to Pittsburgh, and I had always, one of the cases that had always fascinated me, like UFO cases, people talk about like Roswell is a big one, and Rendlesham Forest, like these UFO crashes or UFO sightings. of the more like notable ones. There's this one called in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, that happened, I think, in the 70s, where people said that there's a big comet that came down, but it was shaped like a bell, and people said that it had writing on it, and then the military came and took it out. And as when we were in my aunt's basement getting ready to go to Pittsburgh, and I like had this sudden realization that we were in Pennsylvania, and I was like, I wonder if Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, is anywhere near where we're going to be driving. And I found out that in a roundabout kind of way it was. And I actually had brought this like UFO book with a book about UFOs that like goes into all the stuff. So I like, in kind of like a pre-internet fashion, I broke out that book, and I saw where it was, like off what interstate, and I realized that we were going to be going through there. And it said in the book that they've got like this museum, and I was like, guys, we have to go to this museum. And the other guys thought it was hilarious that I was like so obsessed with this. And they have a model of the bell of the UFO at the place. So we took a little detour on our way from Philly to Pittsburgh in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, and it was a pretty kind of backwoods place. And we got to the museum, and it was pretty rundown. And one of the guys did not want to go in because it seemed like it was kind of rough. But I did get the picture. I got my picture with the bell, which was cool. I got to see the Kecksburg bell. As I've gotten older, it's probably I haven't like researched UFOs as much as when I was a teenager, but I have enjoyed watching some of the news around the military, the Air Force declassifying some UFO stuff and admitting that the government has been funding UFO research programs for years, and all the disclosure stuff that's happened has been really cool, and it's kind of, in some ways, kind of reignited my interest. Yeah.
Indeed, and like the mysteries of the of your podcast and the X-Files, the truth is out there.
Yeah. I think maybe that's a running theme with me is the mystery stuff. You're helping me figure out who I am. I'm glad I said yes to this.
Awesome. I'm glad that you were my guest this evening. It's fantastic, man. And so, you also performed on the Tiny Stage concerts. What are your favorite memories from that show?
Yeah, the guy that does that, Louis Beeler, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He is super cool. He had this idea, kind of like the tiny desk that NPR does, where musicians will come through, like some of the most popular musicians will come through and perform kind of stripped down versions of songs, and really showcases like their brings back the art of performance, and has like a small audience, and it kind of highlights. You get to see like some of the big stars do, like Taylor Swift or whoever, like do stripped down versions of their songs. And this guy had this idea, having performed kind of in the same area that I was performing as a kid, to do kind of the same thing, but for Charlotte-based artists. So he built this stage in his house. He lives in like this suburban neighborhood outside of Charlotte, and built this cool stage in his house with like a big PA system and everything, and cameras all around, and used it to invite local songwriters to come in. And I think he's probably branched out outside of Charlotte and do these series of videos, and it, I think, really took off. I can't remember what number I was, but I had an early number, and I have pride in that. I was really happy that he called me, and some of my favorite songwriters have done that because they're people that I grew up watching, like going to their shows. So it's really cool what he's done. It reminds me of what you're doing, like not just being an artist in the local community, but using your talents to bring up, to lift up the voices of other artists and other venues that are doing the same thing. So it was really fun, and I'm so glad that he does that. And I think now I haven't been able to participate in it because I live in Florida, but he's done like performances where I think they were doing like once a month or once a quarter or something. He would have like the people that did the tiny stage shows. I think you do like 3 or so songs, kind of like the tiny desk thing. He would have those people come and perform at like a coffee shop or something and get a big crowd out. So really cool what he does.
Indeed. And speaking of coffee shops, you've also performed at the Summit Coffee Company, the Summit Coffee Songwriter Showcase. What are some of your memories from that show or from that showcase?
Well, Summit is like my home base. That's where I started performing. Wasn't the first open mic I did. I don't think that they had started theirs yet. But I think I started playing there when I was 14 years old. They started a Wednesday open mic, and I was there every single week as a little kid with a little prepubescent voice and very dark emo songs. And I was probably when I first started playing there, I was like the youngest one by decades, probably. Guys in probably their 30s, 40s, 50s. It was mostly all dudes, but also some kick-ass female songwriters too. But it was an awesome environment to come up in. The people there were they wanted to like build me up and help me become better at what I did and encourage me, which at that young age, sometimes you don't realize how kind it is that I thought it was nice, but like looking back, it's like, I really probably wouldn't be who I am without those people. They like went out of their way to like help. So that's where I grew up. Like that Summit, I would go to Summit Coffee on weekends to see bands play. So that's definitely home base. And then going along with talking about people like you and Louis Beeler, there's this other guy who started this thing where he would showcase local songwriters. I think it was like once a month on Thursdays. They would have or still have, I guess the pandemic has kind of derailed everything. I don't know if they're doing it now, but they would have songwriters come in and they do like 3 songwriters at once, and one will play one song, and then you go to the next songwriter and the next songwriter, and it's like a performance that they typically do on weekends, but more focused on people explaining like where the idea for the song came, or influences and stuff like that. So yeah, very positive memories.
Indeed. And boy, this hour flew by like most superheroes do. And so is there any final words you'd like to share to the audience, Freddie?
Oh man, just gratitude for you for bringing me on. Positive vibes for listeners, and thanks for listening to me ramble and tell stories. And I had a great time. A lot of reminiscing, remembering some of the people that I've met along the way, and old friends that I need to call and catch up with.
Absolutely. And when your sabbatical comes, we'll go on tour with like a stand-up storytelling and singer-songwriter tour.
Sabbatical sounds really good right now. I think I'm a couple years away from it. But time goes fast. Like you said, the hour flew by. Hopefully the next couple years fly by, and then we'll hit the road.
Indeed. We'll call it the Penne Pasta tour. That'd be pretty awesome.
Down. Yeah, let's make posters.
Sounds like a plan, dude. So, with that being said, please like, subscribe, and all that stuff, and donate to Smitty's Greenlight Tavern and the Grindhouse Cafe. They have excellent food. They're open. They're both open. And like, subscribe to Freddie's website and YouTube and social media information that's on there, and the rest of all his information is on the bottom here too. So make sure to check out all his great music that he has going up. Which reminds me, I'm still mad at you for taking your album down from Spotify, by the way. So.
A lot of well, not a lot of people, but a very small select group of people that listen to my music are also mad about that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm working on more music will be coming. Don't worry. I've been in the studio, have some new songs coming your way, putting some finishing touches on them.
Awesome, and that's a great musical note to end on. And with that said, like I close, this is the season finale, so we'll pick back up eventually after I get through Sober October, because I'm stepping away from all the social media.
That seems like very healthy. I can be that. I envy your resolve in following through on that. I hope to be able to do that one day. I think we could all use it.
I think so too. There's just too much negativity on social media. I gotta just get away from it all. Pick up some new hobbies, and it's for the time being.
Good for you.
Most definitely. And until next time on the Wu-Man Chu Chronicles, I'm not a cosplayer. I just crush a lot. So until next time, we'll see you next time.